Welcome to the Explainer. So today we're going to break down this really powerful allegory. It's all about what effective aid really looks like. And it all comes from this fascinating role-playing exercise. Seems simple, right? But the answer, it's actually pretty deep. And getting it right is crucial. I mean, it's the difference between actually helping and, well, accidentally creating dependency. That's a huge deal.
So let's use this simple scenario as our guide. Picture this, a community, and they have to get across this really dangerous river. That river, that's the problem, right? It's the challenge they're up against. And how we go about helping them, well, that tells us everything we need to know about our whole approach.
Okay, so before we even get our feet wet, metaphorically speaking, we need to completely reset what we think the goal is. The source material we're looking at is crystal clear here. True development, it isn't about the stuff. It's not about building wells or roads. Nope. The real prize, the most important outcome, is a person, someone who has fundamentally changed and is now ready to lead that change for their own community. All right, so let's get right into it. We're going to start with a couple of ways to help that. Well, they seem good on the surface. People have the best intentions for sure, but as we'll see, they just don't work.
So, in this first model, you've got this well-meaning helper, right? They take a local person by the hand and start leading them into this treacherous river. But then, poof, the helper is gone. The help just stops. And now this person is stuck, right in the middle. They can't get to the other side, but they can't get back to where they started either. Just stranded.
So what's the big deal here? Well, the problem is that you haven't just failed to fix the first problem, you've actually created a new one. And honestly, it's often worse. Think about it. You've left someone in a more dangerous, more hopeless situation than they were in before you even showed up. All right, let's look at another really common trap. I think we've all seen this one. This is the Superman approach. You've got an outsider, someone with all the resources, all the know-how, and they just fly in and bam, they solve everything for everybody. They literally carry each person across the river, no questions asked. And the source material actually has a name for this type of person, the super foreigner. And you can see why it's so tempting, right? Who wouldn't want to be the hero who just swoops in and saves the day? But there's a huge hidden cost here, a really damaging one. Yeah, and this quote, it just nails it. It cuts right to the ego that can get all tangled up in this kind of help. You become the king of that area. You're the one everyone celebrates. But what about the community? What have they actually learned? Nothing. They've only learned one thing: how to wait for the king, for Superman, to come back and solve the next problem. So when you look at both of these models, the halfway helper and the Superman, what's the bottom line? It's failure. That's it. One approach leaves people literally stuck. The other creates a community that is completely dependent, totally powerless to shape its own future. Okay, so if those ways are so flawed, then what's the right way? What actually works? Well, it all comes down to a really big shift in thinking. We have to move away from just giving instructions and move toward real, genuine collaboration. And you can see how this thinking evolves. So the first step up is when the helper stands on the shore and just directs. Put that stone there and now step here. And hey, that's better. The person gets across, but the helper is still dry, still separate. The real game changer, the magic moment, is when that helper finally gets in the water with the local person. They become a partner. And that in the water together part, that's everything. That's what makes it so powerful. You're sharing the struggle, You're encouraging each other when a rock slips. You're learning from mistakes as they happen. Yeah, it's probably slower. It's definitely harder. But what you build is so much more important than just a way to cross a river. You're building trust. You're building a relationship. You're building real, lasting ability.
And this leads us to the final piece of the puzzle, the most important stage. Because believe it or not, even crossing the river together isn't the final goal. So what is? What does ultimate success actually look like here?
Okay, so picture this. The local person, the one who just made it across with their partner, they're standing on the other side. But they don't just, high five and walk off into the sunset. No, they turn right back around and look at that river they just beat. And then they go back. They become the helper for the next person. And get this, they specifically go help the person who was left stranded in that very first halfway model. This is the moment. This is where that vicious cycle of dependency finally shatters, and a new cycle of empowerment begins. And this is it. This is what true development, true success looks like. The source calls it reproduction, multiplication, growth. That first helper, the outsider, they're not needed anymore. Why? Because the community now has its own leaders, people who can solve their own problems and, crucially, teach others how to do the same. So let's just pull back for a second and map out the whole journey we've been on, from those flawed models all the way to real empowerment. Yeah, this table just lays it all out, doesn't it? You can see the whole progression. We start with the halfway and Superman models, which just lead to people being stuck or dependent. Then we get a little better with the to get model, the director on the shore. But the real shift is to together, which creates empowered partners. And that leads to the ultimate goal, reproduction, where the community itself becomes self-sustaining and can multiply that success. So all of this leaves us with a pretty big question to ask ourselves. In our own work, in our own communities, when we step in to help, what are we really doing? Are we just building a bridge? Or are we creating new bridge builders? Because the goal isn't just to solve one problem. The real, lasting, powerful goal is to empower other people to become the problem solvers, the bridge builders, for their own future.